Welcome to the new SyncMaster2D devlog. In this video, I'll show you how I created a level editor to enhance the process of making new levels. If you don't know what SyncMaster2D is, it's a 2D puzzle platformer where you can copy and paste different movement patterns of objects to advance through the level. I started by developing an auto-tiling system which allows me to drag a tile area and have the appropriate tiles automatically placed in that position. I began with the dirt tiles and it was relatively easy to implement the auto-tiling system for them. All I had to do was check the adjacent pieces to determine if there were air or ground tiles, and then select the correct tile to place. With just the ground tile, this was fairly easy, and I should have continued working on the factory tiles and find the best way to merge them. However, due to my laziness, I decided to add a pen tool instead. This addition transformed the level editor into something almost resembling an art program. I even thought of adding pressure sensitivity. Additionally, I implemented a fill tool which initially encountered some issues but was easily resolved. The problem was that I used a recursive function which led to a stack overflow or something like that. To fix this, I replaced it with a coroutine, but to be honest, the main reason behind this change was to include a fill animation for this devlog, and with a little help from ChatGPT, everything worked smoothly. After completing the simple user interface for tool and material selection, I finally began working on the factory tiles. When I added the factory tiles, they had no transition with the ground tiles, but I needed something better. I initially came up with two simple solutions: placing the factory tiles in a different layer, or always keeping a gap between them. However, I used neither of them since they were both terrible. I thought of various approaches to add merging for multiple materials, 3 materials in my case. If there were only 2 materials, the problem wouldn't exist. To explain the problem a little better, imagine a tile with 2 adjacent tiles, one at the top and one at the bottom. Additionally, we have a spreadsheet or table with all the possible tiles. The color of the lower adjacent tile determines the row, while the color of the top tile determines the column. For instance, if the color is green, the first row is used. If it's yellow, the second row is used, and so on. Similarly, the lower tile determines the column, with green representing the first column, yellow the second column, and so forth. By analyzing the adjacent tiles, we can determine the appropriate tile without checking all of them. In my case, I need a 4-dimensional array since I check all 4 sides of the tiles. I also check the corner, but only to determine the 4 sides. Furthermore, within each row or column, or whatever it's called, I have 3 different tiles: air, factory and ground, resulting in a total of 81 tiles to create. The problem appears when one of the new tiles is adjacent to a tile, because that would introduce 6 additional materials, resulting in a total of 6,561 tiles. However, I knew there had to be a simpler solution. I spoke with someone who had previously created a Minecraft texture pack with blending block textures, and they suggested using layering. I have no idea why I didn't think of it earlier. I had some other bad ideas as well, but with layering everything became much simpler. Although the textures were still not perfect and some were completely missing, it was a quite simple fix. It may not be flawless, but it's the best I was able to achieve without investing another month or more. Please let me know your thoughts on it. The most challenging aspect of the level editor was now complete, but several features were still missing, including the addition of obstacles. These obstacles needed to be placeable, movable, rotatable, and deletable. Implementing that wasn't difficult, but it took some time to get the selection system to feel right. I made it possible to select multiple objects simultaneously using the control key, enabling users to move them collectively. The customizable objects required additional settings. The arrow launcher now has an adjustable shooting delay, and a hint in the hint display can be edited. One of the placeables, the syncable tile, was slightly more complicated. It can have a custom size, and to accomplish this I repurposed some of the tilemap editor code and created new textures. Overall, it was a quite straightforward process. More complex were the settings. Each syncable object can have up to 6 different movements, with each movement having a direction, horizontal or vertical, a speed, and a start and an end position. To handle this, I used a drop-down box where you can select one of the 6 sync movements to edit. Additionally, you can choose which sync movement should be the default, and since each sync movement is only active by default or when copying a sync state, there's no need to provide the option to deactivate a sync movement. With these features completed, I decided to focus on the visuals, which, as expected, was the most relaxing part of the process. Although I wasn't entirely satisfied with the textures, especially the section selection, it's quite alright. but I might change some of them in the future. This covers the minimum goals I wanted to achieve for this devlog. However, since I was already 1 or 2 weeks late to when I wanted to upload this, I decided to include the load and store system in this devlog as well. Surprisingly, it was much simpler than I anticipated. Essentially, I created a new class for each object I wanted to store with public properties that needed to be saved. Then I could store and load those objects in the JSON file. Additionally, I had to write a load and store script for each object, allowing me to load the object from the JSON file and instantiate a new game object with the stored values. With this functionality implemented for the placeable, style maps, syncables and special syncables, I needed to add some user interface elements. In the level editor, you can assign a name to the level and store it. Once a level is stored, you can select it from the drop-down box on the right to load or delete it. Currently, there's no way to play an edited level and some bugs still need fixing, but it was finally time to release this devlog. Overall, I'm quite pleased with the level editor's outcome, but there are a few minor adjustments I need to make in the next devlog. As a side experiment, I recreated the lava level I made at the end of the previous devlog, simply to compare the time required with and without the level editor. I was able to create the level in just about 10 minutes, which was approximately 5 times faster than without the level editor. That's all for this devlog. If you have any ideas or suggestions for the game, please let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next devlog.